Hey folks, I know I'm just an old storyteller, but before we begin, do me a favor, leave a like and subscribe. The content in this video is purely for entertainment. The theories and stories discussed are speculative and not based on any historical evidence. Viewer discretion is advised. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to actually go through with something like this. I mean, I've always been into weird, obscure stuff. Cursed videos, ARGs, deep dive iceberg charts about things normal people wouldn't even think to Google. But this was different. It started the way most rabbit holes do, a late-night conversation in a Discord server. A random thread about banned books that supposedly contained real rituals. The usual stuff got mentioned, the Voynich manuscript, the Book of Soiga, that one cursed PDF floating around Reddit that allegedly ruins your life if you read it. Then, someone dropped a name I hadn't heard before. At first, I thought they were just trying to sound edgy by using an old name for the Necronomicon. Everyone knows about that book, it's a Lovecraft thing, pure fiction. But the way they talked about this felt off. Not in a this is creepypasta bait kind of way, but in a someone in this chat has actually seen it kind of way. One guy, his username was just a string of random letters and numbers, claimed he had scans of a few pages. He wouldn't post them directly, though. Said it was bad luck. Instead, he DM'd me an Onion link and told me to check it out myself. I should have ignored it. I didn't. If you've never been on the dark web, let me just say, it's not like how movies make it seem. It's not some hacker wonderland where you click a few buttons and suddenly have access to international secrets. Most of it is just forums, weird file dumps, and marketplaces selling things that should not be sold. I accessed the link through Tor, expecting to find nothing. Maybe some bootleg copy of the Simon Necronomicon or one of those old PDFs that circulate in esoteric groups. But the site was something else entirely. It was called the Sable Archive. And it didn't look like your usual dark web market. No flashy buy now buttons, no price listings in Bitcoin. Just a black background, white text, and a list of books. Old ones. Books I had never heard of, written in languages I didn't recognize. But there it was, near the bottom. First edition. Arabic and Latin translation. Bound in leather. No price. Just a blinking text box that said inquire. I clicked it, half expecting a broken link. Instead, a chat window popped up. What do you seek? I saw the listing for Allays. Is it real? You wouldn't be here if you didn't already know the answer to that. That should have been my cue to back out. But I asked the only logical next question. How much? Not for sale. For trade. Now this was weird. Most black market books sell for absurd prices, thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. The fact that this one wasn't even being sold outright made me uneasy. Trade for what? A piece of yourself. I stared at the screen, debating whether this was just some elaborate roleplay. Before I could respond, another message appeared. Something small. A tooth. A drop of blood. A keepsake that means something to you. Something that carries weight. I don't know why, but I played along. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the request. Either way, I replied. Blood, I guess. How does that work? A vial. Your name. A promise that you understand what you are about to receive. A few minutes later, I had an address. A real one. Somewhere in Istanbul, of all places. They gave me instructions: fill a small glass vial, seal it, write my full name on a piece of paper, and mail it to them. I should have stopped there. This was insane. But I did it. It took exactly 11 days for the package to arrive. Plain cardboard. No return address. No customs markings. It just showed up on my doorstep. Inside, wrapped in layers of cloth, was the book. And it looked old. Not like some cheap prop from Etsy, but ancient. Leather-bound. The edges brittle. The pages a deep yellowed parchment. The cover bore no title, just an embossed sigil I didn't recognize. The inside was worse. The text was a mix of Arabic and Latin, but it wasn't formatted like a normal book. No table of contents. No clear sections. Just paragraphs of dense, tiny script interspersed with diagrams. Some looked like constellations. Others like anatomy sketches, but distorted. Wrong. And then there were the pages that felt different. Most of the book was on that stiff, aged parchment, but some pages were smooth. Almost waxy. When I ran my fingers over them, they left a strange, oily residue on my skin. The worst part? I recognized some of the words. Not because I knew Arabic or Latin, but because I had seen them before. Buried in internet forums. In old scanned grimoires. In stories that people swore were just fiction. I didn't plan to try anything. I really didn't. But late that night, after staring at those pages for hours, I found a passage that was different from the rest. It wasn't a summoning. It wasn't a curse. It was an experiment. A test of the veil. The instructions were simple: light a candle. Draw the sigil on a mirror using any organic substance. Speak the phrase on the page. Observe. That was it. No sacrifices. No bloodletting. Nothing extreme. Just, observe. I told myself it was harmless. A ritual with no real consequence, but I was so wrong. I had the book open on my desk, staring at the instructions over and over again. It was so simple, almost too simple. No arcane materials, no rare herbs, just a candle, a mirror, and a symbol drawn in something organic. I wasn't about to use blood, and I wasn't even sure what counted as organic, but after a few minutes of digging through my kitchen, I settled on honey. It felt like the safest option, natural, harmless. I took a small mirror from my bathroom and placed it on my desk. Using my finger, I carefully traced the sigil onto the glass. It wasn't a complex design, just a series of interlocking loops and sharp angles, but something about it felt unfamiliar, like it didn't belong to any known language. I lit the candle and placed it beside the mirror, then I spoke the phrase. It was only 3 words, written in Latin, and I had no idea what they meant. But the moment I said them out loud, the candle flickered. Not in the way candles normally do, but in a way that made me stop breathing for a second. I told myself it was a coincidence, the air conditioning had kicked on, or maybe I had breathed out too hard. But as I looked at the mirror, I noticed something off. The honey was moving. At first, I thought it was just gravity pulling it downward, but no, it wasn't dripping. It was spreading, rearranging itself, shifting into something that wasn't the symbol I had drawn. I leaned in closer. The pattern had changed. It wasn't just lines anymore, it was letters. I recognized the script immediately. It wasn't English, but I had seen it before. It was Arabic. I don't speak Arabic. I can't read it. But I did what anyone else would do, I grabbed my phone and opened Google Translate. I held the camera up to the mirror, expecting gibberish. Instead, the app gave me a translation. 1 word. Listen. I turned my head instinctively, expecting to hear something. But there was nothing. The room was dead silent, the only sound coming from the slight crackle of the candle's flame. I looked back at the mirror. The honey was gone. Not smeared, not wiped away, just gone. Like it had never been there in the first place. After that night, I told myself I was done with the book. It wasn't that anything terrible had happened, but something felt different. It's hard to explain. It wasn't a presence. It wasn't a feeling of being watched. Nothing like that. But things started happening. Small things. My phone would randomly turn on in the middle of the night, screen glowing as if I had tapped it. Apps I hadn't opened would be running in the background. Spotify started playing static when I tried listening to music. At first, I thought my phone was just acting up, so I switched to my laptop. Same thing. I'd leave my browser open, only to come back and find tabs open to websites I had never visited. Some were just blank pages with error messages. But one time, it was a video. A grainy, low-resolution clip of what looked like a desert, filmed from a first-person perspective. The camera moved shakily across the sand towards something in the distance, a structure, maybe a ruin. The footage cut off before I could make out what it was. No title. No comments. No channel name. I refreshed the page. The video was gone. A few nights later, I woke up to my phone ringing. It was 3:12 a.m. The number was unknown. I don't answer calls from numbers I don't recognize, especially in the middle of the night. But before I could decline it, the call ended by itself. A second later, a notification popped up. One new voicemail. I hesitated before pressing play. The message was short, only a few seconds of garbled audio. Like someone speaking in a language I didn't understand. The voice was deep, distorted, like it had been slowed down. I played it again. Still incomprehensible. I uploaded the file to an online speech recognition tool. The website processed it for a minute before giving me a result. One phrase. You opened the way. I turned my phone off. I didn't sleep that night. I kept my phone off for the rest of the night. Something about that voicemail didn't sit right with me, and I wasn't about to let it loop in my head. The next morning, I decided to be rational. There had to be logical explanations. My phone acting up. Probably a glitch. The browser opening random tabs. Maybe I had a virus. The voicemail. Just a spam call from an overseas bot. I almost convinced myself. Almost. Then I saw the symbol again. Not in the book. Not in the mirror. On my screen. I was scrolling through Reddit, mindlessly flipping through posts like I did every morning, when something stopped me. A thread in a paranormal forum, one I didn't even remember following. The title was in Arabic. I copied it into Google Translate. Who else has seen this? I clicked. Inside was a single image. The same symbol I had drawn on the mirror. The comments were chaos. Some people claimed it was an old alchemical sigil. Others insisted it was Sumerian. A few swore they had seen it carved into temple walls in Turkey. But one comment stood out: if you've seen this, do not repeat it. The book isn't a myth. My first instinct was to reply, to ask what they meant, to tell them I had drawn it myself. But something stopped me. A second later, I refreshed the page. The post was gone. Not deleted. Not removed. Gone, like it had never existed. At that point, I wanted nothing more than to put the book away, shove it in a drawer, forget it ever existed. But there was a problem. I couldn't find it. I had left it on my desk the night before, right next to my laptop. Now, it was gone. I searched everywhere. Under the bed. Inside my closet. Even in the kitchen, though I knew that made no sense. Nothing. The book had vanished. For the first time since this started, I felt something close to regret. Not fear, not paranoia, just the cold realization that I had done something I couldn't undo. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to will myself to sleep. No phone. No distractions. Just silence. Then I heard footsteps. Not inside my apartment. Outside my window. I live on the 3rd floor. The sound wasn't loud, just a faint, rhythmic tap, 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 like someone walking on something that wasn't quite solid ground. It came and went, fading in and out, like an echo from somewhere else. I stayed completely still, listening. My window faced the street, but when I finally worked up the courage to check, there was nothing. No movement. No one outside. Just the empty road below, as normal as ever. But as I turned away, something caught my eye. On the glass of my window, drawn in condensation, was the symbol. I didn't sleep that night either. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I went back to the dark web. Pulled up the Sable archive. The site was still there. The book was still listed. But when I opened the chat window, my old conversation was gone. No messages. No record of Archist. Nothing. I typed anyway. The book is gone. For a while, nothing. Just silence. Then, after almost a full minute, the chat flickered. A message appeared. That is not possible. I hesitated before replying. I didn't lose it. It disappeared. That is not possible. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Before I could type again, another message appeared. Check your inbox. A second later, my email notification chimed. I hadn't given them my email. I opened the message. No subject. No sender. Just a single attachment. A photo of my apartment. Taken from the hallway outside my door. The timestamp? 4 minutes ago. I stared at the photo for a long time, trying to make sense of it. It was a grainy, low-resolution shot of my apartment door, taken from the hallway just outside. The lighting was dim, like whoever took it hadn't used a flash, but the weirdest part wasn't the photo itself. It was the timestamp. The email had arrived 4 minutes ago. I shot up so fast, my chair scraped against the floor. My first instinct was to check the peephole, but something about that felt wrong. Instead, I grabbed my phone, turned on the camera, and held it up to the door, using the reflection on the screen to see. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I had checked 30 seconds earlier, I might have seen something I wasn't supposed to. I went back to my laptop, reopened the email, and searched for a sender. There wasn't one. Just no sender. I closed my laptop, that was it. I was done. I had ignored every warning, played along with something I didn't understand, and now it felt like I had stepped into a space I wasn't meant to be in. I needed to get rid of the book. There was just one problem. I didn't have it anymore. I tried to go about my day like normal, convincing myself that maybe, just maybe, this was all in my head. But later that evening, as I was getting ready for bed, something changed. I walked into my room and there it was, sitting right in the middle of my desk, the same book I had torn my apartment apart looking for. The same book that had disappeared without a trace, it was back. Nothing about it looked different. Same worn leather cover. Same yellowed pages. But now, it felt different. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, staring, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. After what felt like forever, I reached for it, slowly, carefully, and flipped it open. The pages weren't the same. The writing was different. New words. Words that hadn't been there before. And on the very last page, written in flawless English. A sentence that made my hands go still: "You are ready for the next step." I sat down, staring at the page. This wasn't possible. Books don't change on their own, but no matter how many times I blinked, the words didn't disappear. Below the message was a new set of instructions. This ritual wasn't like the last one. It wasn't a test. It was something else, and the steps were simple. Too simple. Find a dark place. Bring a reflective surface. Speak the phrase aloud, that was it. I closed the book. There was no way I was going to try this. Not after the photo. Not after the symbols. Not after the book had disappeared, only to return on its own. But later that night, as I lay in bed, the thought wouldn't leave my head. It wasn't curiosity this time. It wasn't the need for answers. It was something worse. It was the feeling that I had already started something I couldn't stop. I don't know why I did it, I wish I could say I was forced. Or that I was in some kind of trance. But the truth is, I made the decision myself. I grabbed my bathroom mirror, the same one I had used for the first ritual, and carried it to my closet. It was the darkest place in my apartment. I placed the mirror on the floor, sat down in front of it. Took a deep breath, then, before I could talk myself out of it, I said the phrase. It wasn't Latin this time. It wasn't Arabic. It was English. A simple, 5-word sentence that made no sense, but the moment I spoke it, something changed. The mirror didn't move. The reflection didn't shift. But my own face blinked and I didn't. I sat there, staring at the mirror, my breath caught in my throat. The reflection blinked first. I hadn't moved. I knew I hadn't. But in that split second, my reflection did something before I did. That should have been impossible. I wanted to believe I imagined it, that my eyes were playing tricks on me, that I was just tired. But the longer I sat there, the more I realized it wasn't stopping. My reflection wasn't just mimicking me anymore. It was watching me. Not in the way mirrors normally work. Not in the way I expected. At first, it was subtle, tiny, almost imperceptible differences. A slight delay in movement. A posture that didn't feel quite right. And then, it did something that made my whole body lock up. It smiled. I wasn't smiling. I scrambled back so fast I knocked over the candle beside me. The flame flickered wildly, then snuffed out. The room plunged into darkness. For a few horrible seconds, I thought I was trapped. Trapped in a space where my reflection moved on its own. Where I had done something I couldn't undo. But then I grabbed my phone, flipped on the flashlight, and turned it back toward the mirror. Everything looked normal. Like nothing had happened. But that didn't mean it was over. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. By morning, I had made a decision. I was getting rid of the book. Not hiding it. Not keeping it locked away. I was done. I grabbed it from my desk, flipped through the pages one last time, just to make sure nothing had changed again. But when I got to the final page, I froze. There was one last message. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't in ink. It was printed, as if it had been there all along. "The door is open now." I slammed the book shut. No more. I drove to the far edge of the city, somewhere remote. Somewhere I had never been before. I didn't just want to throw it away. I wanted to put it somewhere it would never be found. I tossed it into a deep, murky lake and watched it sink. I told myself that was the end of it. That night, for the first time in days, I finally slept. No disappearing books. No messages. No signs that something had followed me home. I thought I had escaped it. But the next morning, when I checked my phone, there was a new notification waiting for me. A single image. It was a photo of my apartment door. The same one from before. Same angle. Same dim lighting. But this time, the door was open.